It was because all the back and forth, because if you did not get the information at the beginning, then every time you went to build out a page or create an area, you were stuck and then you would have to wait.
Hey, Scaling Therapy Practice fans. I'm Andrew Chapman, director of the Miracy FM Podcast Network. We have 13 shows on a variety of business topics, probably at least one you'll like. But I'll recommend starting with our top-rated show, Just Between Coaches, which you can find on YouTube or your podcast player. You are listening to the Scaling Therapy Practice Podcast. And now, here's your host, James Marland.
Hey, that was Andrew Chapman from Miracy FM. I did a recording with him, an episode 105. We talked about how to launch a podcast. If you're interested in launching a podcast for your course or for your business, go back and listen to episode 105. Andrew has a lot of wisdom and experience on launching podcasts. Hey, if you wanted to do your own introduction for the show, like you like listening to the show and you wanted to share a little bit about yourself, you can go to the show notes and there'll be a link for you to record your own intro. I'd love to add those for the listeners and for the guest hosts. Before we begin, I got a quick question for you. What if the key to your online course is already inside you? That's right. What if you already have all it takes to make a profitable online course that can fund your mission? If that's something that speaks to you and you've been thinking, I do have a course, well, I have good news for you. We're doing the Therapist Chair to Course Challenge. This is the 5-day challenge where in just a few minutes a day, you're going to refine your idea, find your key audience, and know exactly what you're going to teach and who you're going to teach it to. You're going to find your spark to teach your online course. My goal is to give you 2 years of progress in 1 week of 15 to 20 minutes a day. Just boiling all the good information down into bite-sized chunks for you to make a plan to create your own online course. How can you do it? How can you do it when you're so busy? How can you do it when you're not sure if people will buy it? Well, guess what? I'm going to answer all those questions for free in the 5-day challenge. So go to the website, and in the show notes, there will be a link to sign up for the challenge. And I'll also have a pop-up banner on the homepage for you to sign up for that 5-day challenge. Today, we're going to be talking with Alyssa Avant. Man, we had a great conversation about communication. Communication is really, really important. If you've ever been on the wrong side of a bad communication exchange and you're wondering why things aren't getting done and you just wish you had some more tools to communicate effectively with your direct reports or your virtual assistant, Alyssa has some great tips and tactics that she uses to communicate and make sure things get done for a virtual assistant. So I really hope you'll listen to the show and grab some tips for yourself on how to be more efficient and work with your virtual assistant. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Scaling Therapy Practice. This is your host, James Marland. This is the show where we help mission-driven leaders put their mission in motion. I'm here today with Alyssa Avant. She is a podcaster, author, and the owner of Alyssa Avant and Company, a virtual assistant company that helps business leaders fulfill their mission and get more done. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me back. I was excited that you asked me to come on again.
Oh yeah, I follow your podcast and your posts, mostly on LinkedIn, and I'm always in the background getting your wisdom from your posts and your podcasts. And I was really happy to have you on here because being a business owner, like good support and good help, is hard to find.
That's true.
And when I ran a virtual assistant company, we made big differences in the lives of our clients and our practices when we help them. And I know you do the same thing. So why don't you tell the audience, just catch us up. What do you do? How long have you been doing it? And Yeah, tell us about your practice and your business.
Absolutely. So I have been working as a virtual assistant since 2007. So it'll be 18 years in October. And in the last couple of years, I've actually grown it more into an agency and have 4 team members on board as well. We help Christian authors, speakers, and coaches to build and maintain their online presence. And we mostly help them with email marketing, social media marketing, content repurposing, and their websites. And so we do that with those particular groups of people. It is a joy to serve them and to get behind them in their mission and to be able for them to contribute what they are supposed to the
Mm.
kingdom.
Yeah, uh, because the leaders, there are only some tasks. There's certain tasks only they can do. Like
Right,
they are the most important part in their process, but they don't have to do everything. You
right.
know, they don't have to write the emails. They don't have to post on social media, but they can be the driving mission and vision and voice behind all those things and get it in order. So, I wanted to talk to you today about communication. Like communication I found is one of the things that can either make or break a successful project, a successful working relationship. Um, and there's like pitfalls in communication and best practices. And I know you deal with your clients and you have tools and tips and techniques on using communication effectively. So I wanted to talk about that with you today. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I do up front is a lot of times people are afraid to get on the phone or on a Zoom call like this, but I always when I'm onboarding a client, that's the first thing that I do is get to meet with them face to face, see if they're a good fit for our company and what would it be like working together? And after that, when they do come on board, we ask them how they would prefer to communicate. Everybody's different and everybody has a little bit different communication style. So we offer the one-on-one calls, we offer email, and we offer text messaging. So those are some ways that we can communicate with them on a daily basis, weekly basis, ever how often. I have clients that just like to do check-in calls on a monthly basis to be able to make sure we're on the same page. And I do the same with my team. I check in with them. We actually use a program called Slack for
Mhm.
team communications, but uh, learning what the client wants and is most comfortable with and offering that to them in the beginning is extremely important just to see, be flexible with them and what would they like to how would they like to communicate. So we do that up front so we'll kind of get a feel for them and then that gives us, open communication and knowing how to best serve them.
So, couple things came to mind when you were talking. How important is that onboarding call? When I would do this, sometimes it was difficult to schedule that onboarding call because people really didn't value it. Like, oh, we're just gonna talk about details and numbers and how to get contact. Like, I don't have time for this. Can you explain to the audience like what's the purpose of the onboarding call and how important is it to you to get that done successfully?
I think it's extremely important, especially since I've created this team approach because I like to do the onboarding call to introduce my client to the team member that they'll be working with and get them on the same page and also to gather information because if we gather as much information up front, like in that onboarding call, that means less times that I have to bother you down the road for all the little details of your business that we need to know about.
Those
It
calls
helps
add
them.
up. That
Yeah.
those little calls and interruptions add up, and then it's like
Yeah.
the waste of time in between. Like, y let's say you're missing a vital piece of information, you can't move forward without it, but then it sets in their voicemail or it sets on their text or they don't get ahead. Like, there's a lot of waste. So, what you said about getting it ahead of time, all up front, that's critical.
Yes. Well, I used to do a lot of website builds. And one of the
Mm,
things that I hated about doing websites because all the back and forth, because if
mm,
you did not get the information at the beginning, then every time you went to build out a page or create an area, you were stuck and then you would have to wait. Unfortunately, the only time that that's a big issue for me now, and I dealt with it this morning, was I was trying to help someone with social media and adding some things, us as admin on her team on social media. And there are so many policies, like I guess they're privacy policies and things that Facebook has to send you a text with a code. And, so we were texting back and forth and waiting on it. And so that's really the only time that we have that issue now. But being able to and I like to get on the phone with someone when we're doing something like that, because then they can read me out the code and it can go so much smoother and faster. And we do those types of things, making sure we're added to all of their accounts and things that we need access to, knowing what they use for each platform. So, for example, we do a lot of email marketing. So I need to know, what do you use for your email? What do you use for your website? Some people are Squarespace versus Wix versus WordPress, just ironing out all those little details that we need to know in order to serve them the very best way possible.
So I was wondering about you talked about their preferred method of communication, but you also talked about regular communication and getting in that rhythm. Uh, I know everybody has their own preference, but what do you think is the right amount of communication? Is it weekly, daily? I guess it sometimes depends on the project, but once you're in the groove, I suppose, what is the appropriate level of communication, and why do you think people should keep communicating even when things are going well?
Well, my minimum for my team members to communicate with their client and they CC me is on Fridays, we do like a recap. So every Friday,
Mhm.
they will do a recap, letting their client and myself know these are the things that we're continuing to work on. And they give me like a status update. They give their client a status update. They might list the projects that they're working on and then list where they are on those projects, what they need from the client at that point, what's kind of, stopping them from completing the project. And so minimum is weekly. Now, if you're in the midst of a project and you are actively working, then obviously you're going to communicate even multiple times a day, sometimes, depending on the process and where you are on the project. But for my team and I, it is a weekly status update.
So, and that's something you promise to your clients. You
Yes,
you
correct.
update them weekly. And I've had clients in the past like, "Oh, weekly's too much." And but there are reasons why you came to that weekly status update, and there's reasons why you put in your email what you're working on and what's blocking you and what you've accomplished. Can you, as I talk about those things, how did you come up with like the weekly rhythm and what you put in those emails?
Well, basically, it's been from experience over time of learning. Sometimes things slip through the cracks, and therefore we might forget, or the client might forget where we are on a specific task or project. And, things get buried in email all the time. And
Oh
so
yeah.
maybe, earlier in the week, we're doing this weekly recap. And maybe earlier in the week, we had emailed and asked for a piece of information or pertinent, you know, information for their project, and maybe they didn't see it, so maybe we're texting, and like you said earlier, maybe they never opened that text message. I have opened text messages and forgotten to respond, which, maybe you're at lunch and you're like, oh, I need to read this, but then after you get back to your office or whatever you're doing, you forget to respond. And so that's why that follow-up email on a weekly basis is critical, because then it's like a reminder, to myself and to the client, and it helps set a good expectation for both of us, to be able to continue moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. I always felt like the weekly email, we in our when I ran the virtual assistant company, we did have to learn about the rhythm of communication because there were often projects that were going very well, but just like you said, a critical piece of information or an expectation gets buried in an email or a text, and then it doesn't get done, or a step gets missed and then you do the wrong steps or the step got changed. You do the wrong steps for weeks and it causes chaos when it's found.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
there's two travel examples of that. One is the airplane. When an airplane's on autopilot, it's not going in a straight line. It's making micro corrections. It's like taking a reading, making a correction, traveling for a certain distance, making another reading, and
Yeah,
then
redoing it.
correcting. Yeah, it's correcting over time.
Right.
And so the if the distance in between the corrections leads to how big of a variation or mistake
Right. How
you
far
might be
off we
making,
are.
how
Mhm.
far off you are. And then the other travel one is it's much easier to uh, pull a car out of a ditch before it goes in the ditch.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
like if you don't notice until the end when it's too late, like either trust is broken or results aren't there, or I've worked with like um maybe the insurance wasn't getting done because it was just a human error. And then you go 3 weeks without that, and then all of a sudden the therapists aren't getting paid because the
Right.
insurance didn't go, like somebody didn't click the button to submit it or whatever. It's not those, it's normally those little things that build up. And without the course correction, without those check-in emails, it just gets buried and missed. So I didn't want to glaze over those check-in emails because I really think those status updates, once you do them and on a rhythm, it makes good projects, or it turns okay projects into good projects, and good
Right.
projects into great, you know, high producing, very valuable projects when everybody's on the right page, heading in the right direction. So, anyways, I just wanted to highlight that those recap
Yes.
emails. It's not a one-off thing.
Yeah, it
They're
takes
really
time
important.
to get used to doing that. It takes, like, getting in the habit of doing that, but and sometimes it takes a little time for them to see the value in it, but it is definitely a valuable piece.
Yeah. All right. So, we started talking about different ways that people communicate. Um, there's email, text, phone, Slack. Uh, how do you and then people have their preference. Like I've had people say, "Oh, I only want text or I only want phone calls." Like how do you use the right method of communication for the task or the person? Is there a way to work through that?
Well, one of the things that I point out to them early on is, say they choose email and things are going along smoothly, and then maybe we're working on a project and I really need their feedback, but it is difficult to type it all out, what I need their feedback on, or it's difficult to point out what we're looking for. And so sometimes I will say, to to keep down confusion, the best way for us to do this is for us to connect via phone or Zoom, so that we can look at this project together. We can look at this, web page together, email together, and we can work on this at the same time so that I know what you're seeing and making sure we're seeing the same things and everything's lining up. Most of the time, you kind of just discover this on accident sometimes when you're realizing, hey, this email thing back and forth isn't working. Some people have a hard time communicating what they're looking for in an email. They need to tell me. And so, sometimes it's the client who points out, I could really benefit from talking to you today about this, or, can we set up a call? So most of the time it is because it becomes difficult to communicate in the way that we'd established.
Yeah. I had a 2 email rule. If I
Yeah.
couldn't if I couldn't communicate it in 2 emails, or things were getting worse
Uh-huh.
after 2 emails, then it's a phone call or a meeting. Like, you
Right.
just
Absolutely.
oh, man, I made some bad mistakes continuing to try to understand and get my point across over email.
Right. Well, you both end up getting frustrated.
Yeah.
So I usually try to, email them and say, hey, can we get on a quick call, or text them and say, do you have time to talk today, or can we schedule something?
Okay, so do you make them, or you choose a preferred method of communication and then you stick with that? Because one of the problems is knowing where to get the information. I think either it's email or text, or we communicated over a social media
Right.
platform, and I was like, I forgot we even did that. Like, oh yeah, we communicated in that. I was looking through the emails for it. Like, so do you have any tips on like how to keep things straight? You just use one platform, or how do you?
I try to use that. Sometimes it kinda goes awry because maybe they thought of something at the last minute and they have
Mhm.
to text me, or they're, trying to remember something, so they text and ask a question, but I usually try to keep them on one. 2 is not bad, if we're kind of alternating between text and email, but, I just try to go with what they prefer in the beginning, and then as time goes on, sometimes that will change. I'm flexible as I try to be as flexible as possible with that.
Hmm. Great. Well, what about some tools, communication tools that you use? Like what are some of the things out there that you use to keep projects and things on track?
Well, a couple of things that I do. One is for the onboarding piece and like the leads and things like that. I use HoneyBook, which works really well for sharing information with someone who is interested in working with a virtual assistant, and then also for keeping up with the contracts and all the things like that. And then I also use Asana as a project management system that will allow me to track the different projects that we have going and each of the tasks and subtasks. Sometimes clients like to be included in Asana and be able to see what we're working on live without having to, ask, but I don't have very many that want to do that. But it's mainly just for the behind the scenes, and it helps us stay on track. One of my favorite features is that you can repeat tasks. We do a lot of repetitive tasks where we're doing something for the client on a weekly or monthly basis, and it will repeat that over and over so I don't have to keep putting it in. I really like that about it. It also helps me just stay on track. Another thing that I have that's not necessarily a tool, it's something we have to build out, is a set of SOPs or
Mm,
standard operating procedures. And I try to do these specifically if a client has something that we're going to work on, um, a repetitive task. So we're going to do a weekly newsletter or a monthly newsletter, or we're going to do their social media on a regular basis and have kind of a standard by which we go by for that. Um, so that if one, say that something happens with one of the virtual assistants on the team, maybe they get sick or something, someone else could step in and do the work by following that procedure.
yeah, that's critical for past for doing tasks over and over again with a standard level of competency and professionalism,
Right.
for sure. Um, do you, just just curious, why did you choose Asana over ClickUp or Trello or Monday or one of the other ones? Is it something that you made
I
a
like
conscious
this.
decision with, or what?
Yeah, I like the style of it. We talked about that you had used Trello.
Yeah.
I liked the list, and that when I open it up, one of my favorite things is I can go to my task and it has every task listed that I have to do no matter what project it's on.
Mm,
When I was using Trello, I would have to go into a board to see each individual project. It did not give me a good overarching, like, you know, from the sky view of everything I had to do that day or that week or that month. It was, a lot of having to open different little boards. And so I
yeah.
really like that, sky from the top view. Okay, I have this many tasks. That was my favorite thing. And being able to make assignments, you can assign to your different team members, each of the clients. That was helpful too.
Okay, great. Before I ask you about your, your web page and things like that, do you have a story or a time where you worked really hard on the communication with a client? It might not have started out well, but you worked through some problems and then it ended up, fantastic. Do you have a story about that?
Well, yes, we I have had lots of issues in the past where, communication was in the beginning difficult. And I think most of it was because that person was trying to share details, bit by bit by bit, and not like that overarching. So, one of the things that I did do was implementing, even if they don't prefer phone for the entire relationship, I like to have that in the beginning, a call in the beginning so that I can ask some standard questions and get a good feel, an idea of how they work and how they like to work. I also created a what I call my how I work document. And that document talks about the way in which we practice
Mm.
and the procedures that we use, and like the fact that you're going to get a weekly email, all those different things, so that it sets the expectation, and it helps them to know, this is what you can expect from me. This is what I expect from you. And that has helped me over time, because in the past, not having those expectations set has caused issues with the communication.
Awesome. That sounds really good. Um, Having those, how we work best together, what we do, the standards, all of it works together to so that the owner, the person with hiring the virtual assistant company can get stuff done and get
Right,
stuff done effectively and stay on track. So I
right.
love that. I love what you do and how virtual assistants and the good support can make the difference between, you know, uh, tears of joy and laughter or tears of anguish and
That's
frustration.
right.
Why are things so hard? So thank you for what you do and your services. Why don't you tell us about your webpage and some of the services that you offer and your podcast?
Okay, absolutely. So it is AlyssaAvantandCompany.com, and you can go over there. It's uh, to see all of our services and the things that we offer. Also, I do have a podcast for Christian authors, speakers, and coaches. It's called Christian Business Advantage. You can search for it on your favorite podcast app, or if you go to the website, you can click podcast in the navigation there.
Excellent. I saw you offer some services for social media and um,
Social media, email marketing,
email marketing was what I was thinking of. Yeah.
yes, content repurposing. So, like repurposing content you might have if you have like a podcast or a blog into other pieces of content, as well as helping with websites.
Yeah, as someone who produces their own podcast, I'm raising my hand. That's a lot of work. It's like
It is.
at least a half day to get all the repurpose the blog post and the YouTube video and the audio and the graphics and social media posts, and then sometimes I do clip reels out of it. That
Yes.
that all that stuff, it's all there. Like, if you record any content or do some blogs, all your stuff is there. It just takes time to get it done. So you don't have to do it all. A virtual assistant company can really help you maximize your time and get your message out there. So anyways, thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
the
you.
show. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Scaling Therapy Practice. Remember, you don't have to do it all by yourself to put your mission in motion. Get some support so you can do the best things that you do while other people do the best things that they do. We'll see you next time.